Welcome home. We are WNST. Tassel, Baltimore. Baltimore Positive. I've got the 25th anniversary logo here. We're about to go 26. We're going to have the oyster. We're going to have a little crab on it, maybe even a candle. It's all brought to you by the Maryland Lottery. It is the Maryland Crab Cake Tour. The Gold Rush Sevens doublers are here. I was supposed to get the Raven scratch-offs today. There was a snafu. I'll have them next Friday at Fadley's. The Crab Cake Tour's out. The Oyster Tour's out. Today is day 9 of the Oyster Tour. We're here as part of the Oyster Festival, Fells Point Oyster Fest. It's here all weekend long. We're at Kooper's. My man Dave Sheinin. You didn't bring your guitar.
What? Was I supposed to?
Well, McCready's across the street at the Pendry because I saw him, right? Springsteen's in town. I texted the great Nils Lofgren this morning.
Yeah.
I texted the Rock and Roll Hall of Famer 20 minutes ago, and I know he's within a mile of here. He's either at the Four Seasons or he's at the Pendry, and I'm thinking, like, if I look out the window and I see Gary W. Talent walking by, or I see Sister Susie Tyler, you know what I mean? Like,
you're going to lose it.
If I see little Steven with a scarf just walking over there by the water taxi. So I set this up I realized, but I didn't realize, and it's a blessing to have you here. Dave Sheinin from the Washington Post, freshly back from the Olympics. How do you say Olympics in French?
Olympique.
Olympique. I knew you would know that.
Yeah.
From the Trocadero all the way back here to Fells Point, a Fells Point resident. Don't hold that Washington Post thing against him. He's been in Baltimore's like forever.
Forever.
And I know you as a baseball writer, then you did football, then you did baseball, then you've done the Olympics. You've done like a dozen Olympics. And you're a rock and roller, you're a musician. The music you hear on WNST, that little ditty that plays when Andy Mueller says, "You're listening to Nestor Aparicio on Baltimore Positive, and here's Nestor." And that music is your music. And I got to update that, man. I got to do something where we get it right forever, because it plays 3 times an hour on the station.
Nice,
you know?
nice.
So you are the official music provider to Baltimore Positive.
Awesome.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, man. Or I could write you something fresh sometime if you need it.
Well, I'm all jacked up, dude. I was at Pearl Jam last night, and I'll be really honest with you. There's nothing like a concert close to home, right? Like, the concert's over. I parked around the corner. I got my little spot downtown by Mercy. I was in bed at 11:40. And I slept hard, and I'm always a 3 a.m. get-up guy. I slept till 7:47 this morning. I had to meet with my accountant at 8 a.m., and he blew me off. He must have been at Pearl Jam. And I thought, man, I can lay in bed all day, and oh, my God, I got to go to Kooper's. I got oysters to eat. Styx is in town. Springsteen's in town. I had to make a decision.
Yeah.
And we've got Orioles in the pennant race. We got the Ravens kind of on the weird side. And I saw Eric DeCosta at Pearl Jam on Thursday night.
Oh.
Between sports and music and oysters, we've come a long way from COVID, you and me. I think we have.
No doubt. Gosh. Was the last time that we did this during COVID?
No, we did Coco's about a year and a half ago.
Okay, that was post-COVID.
And you famously said you were betting on neither one of the teams winning a championship because it's so hard to do.
Oh, yeah.
You're not just a journalist. You understand math.
I mean, yeah, and I hope I didn't jinx him or anything, but, yeah, I guess the reverse jinx maybe. No, I mean, I remember that very vividly, and, I mean, it's a crapshoot in the playoffs to a large extent, especially in baseball. Baseball's a complete crapshoot. You get hot for a week.
That's why I still think they can win.
Oh,
that's why I'm not down on them
you're
because it's not good right now.
You just got to be in. You just got to get in, and you got a chance. No question.
I think it feels different when you don't have the talent to win. And on the baseball side, for me with them, if they get Burns and Eflin and some version of Suarez or Rodriguez to the hill, if they can figure out a little bit of bullpen, and listen, Soto comes in the 6th inning, gives up 2 runs. You know what? Mountcastle's going to have to go out and hit 3. You know, somebody's going to need to be a star.
Yeah, I mean, the bullpen is a mess, but there are arms out there, and if you trust Brandon Hyde to piece it together, I think it's possible, you know? Like, they don't have that 9th inning shutdown guy that some other teams have, and a lot of teams don't, actually. Like, look at what the Yankees are dealing with. But if you trust Brandon Hyde to collect those last 9 outs with however he needs to do it, I think they've got a chance.
Luke and I have been arguing about Dominguez and Cano. Clearly, Kimbrel's not the guy. But to me, Cano could be really effective in the postseason for me.
I would think so.
Yeah, and so I'm still – I'm not bullish on them. I'm bullish on their opportunity. I'm bullish on the fact that nobody else is markedly better than them if they just hit the ball for a week or two.
That's right.
If they get the right matchups, if they – like, but hitting the ball is something that feels like it's – It's been a while, and Mayo and Holiday have looked very much the part of in over their heads. The injuries to Westberg, the injury to Mateo.
Rutschman hasn't hit in
It feels to me
months.
like he's hurt. You've watched a lot of baseball, Dave. He's a phenom who's not doing it right now.
I mean, I would say it's certainly possible, but the fact that they keep running him out there behind the plate, makes me think he's not hurt.
It makes me feel like he's hurt enough to be not great, but can still play.
Yeah.
And that's the worst spot because, like, his bubblegum card's going to reflect this last 90 days. And I don't know what October is going to be, but I know they're going to play in October. So that because of the theater part of that, to me, this whole cavalry over the next 2 weeks, they got these big games against the Yankees next week, and whether they're going to win the division or not, or whether they even – I had Barry Bloom on, old schooler. I know I had Barry on his week.
Yeah.
He was wearing his Yankee hat, playing the role, like the David Wells role, and he was like, I want the Yankees to not win the division. They should play during the week. It doesn't – and this is an old-timer – baseball players don't need 4 days off. It's not good for baseball players. This isn't Lamar Jackson playing too much football. This is pitchers and hitting and timing.
No, I mean, I think history has shown that. Teams that have that long rest in between series, it's a disadvantage in baseball. It's not an advantage. And, in fact, you saw this year for the first time, the World Series now has a movable starting date. If both LCS series end in 5 games or fewer, 4 or 5 games, they start the World Series 2 days earlier.
Really?
Yeah, and that's the first time they've ever done that, this dynamic start.
So that way both teams don't get dusted for 4 days.
Yes.
Okay. Well, Dave Sheinin knows things. He's worked. When did you start at the Washington Post? I want to give your background because I your credibility is implicit with me and on the airways. But some people don't know, like they don't read the Post, or it's been a while. They think he's a baseball guy, and they don't know you live in Baltimore and a rock star and all that stuff. But like 30 years?
No. 25.
Oh, that's all.
99.
That's all. Not 30, just 25.
Yeah. I mean, dating myself here.
I'm 33 years on the radio.
Yeah,
that's
wow.
crazy.
Holy crap.
I don't feel 33 years old. My kid turns 40 next week. It's crazy.
That is sick, man. That's insane.
It's been a while.
And then how many years in print before that?
I did 8 years.
8 years.
2 at the News America. By the way, here's a cool newspaper thing. Are you coming down to Guinness for the big event next on the 28th? Do you know about this?
I don't.
You never worked at the Baltimore Sun?
No.
Okay, so there's a Baltimore Sun.
I applied and didn't get the job.
Well, Jack, you screwed up. All right, locking 4 over him. Stop. No, I'm just. And you were obviously colleagues with Jason at the Post too. So the News American, it'll be 40 years next week, next Saturday, the 21st. It'll be 40 years since Sports First folded, and then the News American made it another year and a half, and that was my time. 84, 85, 86. I was at those papers, then I went to the Sun in January of 86, left in 92, and here I have. December 91, Kenny Albert put me on the radio here. So
nice.
That era of sports writing, and I guess you were a young whippersnapper then, not like all the way in, right? But Rosenthal, Justice, Kirkchin, down the line, I had Dan Shaughnessy on recently and Clark Judge, other people that worked in Baltimore. We do this reunion down at Guinness on the 28th. Molly Dunham and Stan Rappaport do it. And I thought it's like a sports writer convention for anybody who ever worked in Baltimore. So you should be a part of it, even though you didn't work at the Sun or the News. So I'm doing a reunion next Saturday for the 40th anniversary of the folding of Sports First. So Bernie Miklasz.
Oh, my God.
Jeff Gordon. John Hawkins, Ed Dentry.
They're coming in?
No, we're going to Zoom.
Okay.
We're Zooming up.
Right.
We're Zooming up. A guy named Barry Levine that was at the National Enquirer. He was all part of the David Pecker thing with Trump a couple years. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Written books. So we've had a famous group of alums, and some went to Sacramento and worked at Sacramento Bee. Some went to St. Louis. But we're all getting together next Saturday and doing a Zoom to tell old sports writing war stories of the 1980s. You know what I mean?
Man, sounds right up my alley. 21st or 28th?
21st is a Zoom. 28th, we're going to have beer. People are getting together. That's a much bigger gathering. Van Valkenburg might even be there.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God.
KVV.
But there really is, when you've been in this life forever.
Yeah.
We all sort of, at least I do, idolize each other in certain ways to say, what's he writing, what's he know. And I had Michael Gelkin on this week, who just left the Dallas Morning News, younger guy, 15 years covering the Chargers and the Raiders. He chased both teams away, had lost his job at the San Diego Union Tribune because they didn't have a football team anymore. So he's just done. He's 38 years old. He lives in D.C. He's like, I'm out, 15 years of covering the league. It's all I ever wanted to do. I worry about Luke,
Yeah.
but it's just it's all we ever wanted to do, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like and you're still doing it, and you're over at the Olympics, and you're seeing this incredible. You've just lived an incredible life in that way. We all have. I've covered 27 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
The Olympics, man. There's nothing bigger than Mary Lou Retton for me. You know.
Same, man. I was way into Mary Lou Retton back in the day. Yeah.
How many for you? 13, 14?
No. Like 7, 8 maybe.
Okay.
I can't remember.
Thought it was more than that.
Yeah, there's been some where I missed because of baseball, some I missed because of football.
But you weren't on the Phelps beat, right? That wasn't your thing.
In 16, I was. His last one.
By the end,
in Rio.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like Paul McMullen at the Baltimore Sun
yeah.
was on the Michael Phelps beat from he was 13 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really a rich thing we have in this area because we have been blessed. We haven't had a lot of big league ball players. I mean, Ripken and a couple of guys that grew up here that became legendary.
Yeah.
But from an Olympic standpoint,
Babe Ruth was okay.
Yeah, but that was 150 years ago.
Yeah,
I'm talking about in our era to cover.
Yeah.
We've had Carmelo Anthony. You know, I'm just trying to think of super incredible, legendary. But Michael Phelps is puts the Olympics on the map in Baltimore. We've had stadiums full of people cheering for him. So the Olympics, the light comes on for the Olympics in our region, I think.
No, he changed everything. No question. I mean, my kids came up swimming in Baltimore largely because he made swimming cool for kids. And, I mean, they were a couple generations after whatever, but that's what they wanted to do. That's what their friends did. You swim in Baltimore or you play lacrosse.
Well, in my era, it was Anita Knoll. And before my first ever byline at the News American, in my life, made my father cry. I wrote a little 8-inch piece on Teresa Andrews striking gold at the 84 Olympics.
Wow.
And they came to me and said, kid, get Murray Stevens on the phone. Murray Stevens was the North Baltimore aquatic coach, right?
Yeah.
I got Murray on the phone to get a couple of quotes from him after our kid from Mount Washington won a gold medal when I was 15 years old.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? Like, swimming was the first headline I ever had in my life. And I don't think about it like that because I didn't grow up in a pool, but how many – you're pool dad. You're a swim dad for sure, right?
Yeah. And, I mean, you know, you look at the state of USA swimming right now, and ever since Phelps retired, it's kind of been going down. You don't have him anymore to go out and win you 8 or 9 gold medals, 7 or 8 gold medals at every Olympics and World Championship, and relays.
Right.
So, yeah, ever since he left, you know, like they got passed by the Australians a couple years ago. And Phelps was such a massive, dynamic superstar for that sport. And really, since he's gone away, Katie Ledecky is amazing, but she's not as radiant and as just a media force like Michael Phelps was.
Well, I mean, Phelps is doing stuff like he pops up again and again, and
he's still the biggest star in the sport. He's been retired for almost a decade.
Yeah, so you're over in Paris. What's the vibe over there? I mean, I've been to Paris. I mean, I love Paris. I had friends that were over there. The first night, and I don't have the Olympics Jones, right? Like, I had a chance to go to Atlanta in '96. My buddy Scotty P. And it's probably good that I didn't with the bomb and, like, everything that happened down there. But, like, there was a chance to get in the car and go to Atlanta in '96. I did not do it. I don't regret it. I don't have regrets like that. I've never been to Wimbledon. There's a couple places that used to be on my bucket list that, like, I haven't gotten to. And I live vicariously through people like you.
Yeah.
But the first night, one of my old girlfriends, hi, Dimmy, she was over there with a troupe. And with Keith Mills' girlfriend now, who I've known for 100 years. And they put a picture up on the first night. They were at the top of the risers at the beach volleyball in front of the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah.
And I looked at it and I'm like, well, that's pretty freaking cool. Now I want to go. You know, like I didn't have the Jones, but did you do that setting? And
yeah. I mean, I did it just for fun. Like, I didn't cover any beach volleyball, but one day in between sessions of swimming, morning prelims, evening finals, there's a 6-hour break in between. I just went to see some stuff for the hell of it. I went to Roland Garros because Joker was playing Nadal in a singles match.
Had you been there before?
I had never been before. I'm like,
I'm
going
to
the French. I'm going to the Roland Garros.
1999, I went to the French Open. I saw it was when Agassi went crazy, and I saw Rancho Sanchez Vicario playing in the finals. Springsteen was playing Bercy in Paris.
No way.
So that's why I went. I went to see Springsteen. And the U.S. Open was happening. So $125 later, I'm on the clay court. I'm up top. My hair was bleach blonde. You know,
I remember
Eiffel
that
Tower.
era.
You know, you were friends with it. You were covering the Orioles in '99. I like, to me, that was a real highlight for me to go to Roland Garros. Like if you were to ask me all the cool things I've done in my life sports-wise, attending a French Open final at Roland Garros was unbelievable. I mean, and I was a kid. I didn't even appreciate it. I was 30 years old. I didn't even appreciate it. I didn't even like Paris then. You know?
No.
Now, how about 3 weeks? How long were you there?
I was there almost a month because I took some vacation after. Flew my family out. We did Paris and Amsterdam. Yeah,
all right.
So it was almost a month, and I mean it was phenomenal. I mean, you got to think about where we were all mentally coming into that Olympics. The last Olympics, Beijing 22 Winter Games, was an absolute nightmare. COVID, authoritarian government, surveillance state, everything was just harrowing, the entire experience.
You did it.
I did that one in Beijing. And so, you go from that to beach volleyball under the Eiffel Tower and equestrian at Versailles, and it was just it was amazing.
Equestrian at Versailles.
It was at
You just
Versailles.
dropped that and expect me not to ask you about equestrian
No.
at
It was
Versailles.
Their venues were unbeatable, unmatched. I mean, LA in 28 is going to pale in comparison no matter what they do. They could put events on the Hollywood sign and it's still going to pale compared to what Paris did. They just can't compete with that.
Give me the European experience from Europe. I was in Europe a year and a half ago. I was in Amsterdam. I was in Germany. The man who saved my wife's life's in Germany. There's a thing about going over to Europe, and some people have been, some people haven't. But to just implore people, which I try to do here all the time. If you've been, you know. And there are people that say, I've never done it. Get a passport. My father-in-law's passport expired, and he went. I'm like, come on, man. You got to be able to, in a moment's notice, experience these things in life. And for you, after COVID, after all that, to fly your family over, your kids are of the age where they can really
Teenagers,
enjoy it, right?
Yeah.
Really means something to them, pictures and all of that. That's a special summer, right? I mean, really, going to Europe.
No question. I mean, I get cynical about this gig, and I'll complain
Don't we all?
And bitch and whine. But I tell you what, when you're at something like that, you sit there and you think to yourself, man, this is a great gig. I get to do this. I'm getting paid to do this. I'm in Paris for 3-4 weeks on somebody else's dime. And we are working our asses off, right? I mean, it's 3 straight weeks of 14-hour days. No days off. You're just exhausted.
Sounds like Luke Jones' job. Yeah, so.
But at the end of every day, at nighttime, you're still in Paris, and you're still going out for a great meal, even if it's 10, 11, 12 o'clock on somebody else's dime. And, it's a great gig.
Yeah, I would say, man. I mean, back from Paris Olympique. I want to make sure I'm saying that. Dave Sheinin of the Washington Post, longtime baseball writer, football writer, my friend, musician. The music part of Baltimore, and we'll get back to football and championships and all that. I want to talk music because I'm looking out the window and Springsteen might walk by. And
any minute.
Pearl Jam, there's 2 young kids here in Pearl Jam hats. Yeah. I've seen Springsteen people.
They might be roadies.
I got my Styx belt buckle on right now because Styx is playing the Lyric tonight too, and I'm actually going to support Styx. I saw Springsteen at Nats Park last week.
Yeah.
So I picked my spots, right? So I paid $49 to see Springsteen last Saturday.
How'd you do that?
It was 11 in the morning. They dumped some tickets, and my wife and I just bought them. We were in Frederick on the Oyster Tour. This Oyster Tour has been unbelievable too. This is day 9. I've had 8 different oysters, 8 different ways the last 8 days.
Wow.
We have a festival going on.
I didn't know there were 8 different ways to do oysters.
Dude, there's 100 ways to eat oysters, and I didn't know this either. Do you like oysters?
I love them, yeah.
So when you say you love them, what is an oyster to you? What you go in, you shuck, you put some cocktails.
Generally raw, yeah. I mean, I've had the Rockefeller, I've had the po' boy. I mean, fried, I don't know. What else is there? Grilled?
Yes, and yes,
I mean,
all of that.
I just,
I thought the same thing. So my experience with oysters is as a little boy going to Bull and Oyster Roast with my parents, them drinking beer and dancing, and there's a band, and it's down at the hall, and like, you know what I mean? That's Baltimore, right?
Yeah,
so as
Baltimore.
a kid, you would see the oysters and be like, and your parents would make jokes about sex and, and like all lead in a pencil and all that. And you'd see them and you'd be like, well, that's kind of gross. And you'd be like, all right, I'm going to do it as a dare, right? Like it's a dare. Like I think the sign says he who ate the first oyster was a brave man somewhere around here at Cooper's, right? So you eat and you slip it down and you're like, okay, I'm a man, put hair on my chest when you didn't have any, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, so, and then you get the cocktail and you get the heat. And then you get the salty, right?
Yeah.
And I like it forever, right? But no one had ever brought me a fried oyster in my life. I've never ordered. If I get a po' boy, it's going to be shrimp. If I go to Costas, it's going to be shrimp. It's going to be crabs. It's going to be crab cakes. It's going to be crab imperial. It's going to be a steak. It's going to be chicken. Like oysters is just like, I don't dislike them, but there's always something calamari calling me higher on the menu, right? Yeah. So, not to mention any level of breadsticks and mozzarella, anything else you would get that would be an appetizer. And I eat them when I'm somewhere and they're there and someone gives them to me. I don't order them for $20 a half dozen ever because I would come in here and get the blackened tuna wrap is what I would get at Cooper's, right? Damie, about a year and a half ago, down at Fadley's, and I got to get you to Fadley's during the World Series, when I do the show at the World Series. She brought me fried oysters and put them on the table and said, eat these. Well, I'm doing a show. And I'm like, that's really good. She's like, yeah, I know. I'm like, I've never had a fried oyster in my life. She's like, what?
Wow.
And I'm like, well, I wouldn't order it. At these cocktail events you go to, they give you raw ones, right?
Yeah,
like if you go to a taste event, like all these things I've ever done in my life. Raw oysters are ubiquitous to Baltimore in season. You can find them anywhere. But fried, grilled, the first time I ever did that was that place down in New Orleans where Drago's, right? Where you put the cheese and the butter and the garlic. Right.
Amazing.
I had never had one of those until the Ravens were in the Super Bowl 12 years ago. And I've only probably had 2 trays of them since, even though I know how friggin' good they are.
Yeah.
I just don't think about ordering them. And then Damie's like, well, you knucklehead, this is how the bay gets oxygenated. If you want a crab cake, you have to have the oysters oxygenate the bay. You don't like crab cake? Crab cake prices? We need more oysters to oxygenate the bay, to clean the bay. Then I saw this pig trick where they bring this aquarium and they put oysters in the aquarium and the water's all dirty and they have a cocktail party and 4 hours later the water's clean because the oysters clean the water, right? It's like an ad,
So
right?
where does all that stuff go? Are you eating that when you eat the oyster?
I don't know. Don't bring that up on a day when I'm eating oysters like that. They're delicious. So I then learned about the Oyster Recovery Partnership. This is where the journalism comes in, Dave.
Okay.
So you always see, give us the shells in the other bag. Don't put the shell.
Yeah.
Those shells, the Oyster Recovery Partnership picked those up at places like this and Thames Street and all the other places that do oysters. And they spat them down and put them back into the bay so that the oysters grow better and bed better and molt better and do all the things that they do. And I'm learning about that this month. I don't know enough. I'm not a scientist.
Amazing. Yeah.
So oysters are important.
Nature, man.
Well, you got to eat them. That's the important part. So we're here at the Oyster Fest. Dave Sheining's here from the Washington Post. Music. You making music?
I'm not really. Just because I have kids who are close to college age and making music is expensive.
What? What do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, because, look, I'm not going to make music that sounds crappy, Like, I don't have the home production skills. So if I'm going to make a record or make music, I need it to sound good, and I need to go to a studio to do that.
Okay.
And that's expensive.
Okay. See, I feel like everybody does this at home now, so this is interesting to me.
Yeah, but you have to
No offense to Sheffield Studios or anybody out there I know who does studio work and charges for that and does it. I mean, I understand that, but it feels to me like a lot of musicians sit at home and tinker, especially in the era of COVID. I mean, I just saw people doing really creative things.
People can make entire albums that sound amazing on their iPhones, no question about it. You just have to know what you're doing. You have to have the equipment, pro-quality equipment, but you can record right on your iPhone, and it's going to sound amazing if you know what you're doing. I don't know what I'm doing. I need some friends to come in and play bass and drums and stuff, and I need a studio to mix it and master it and stuff like that. It's expensive. You cannot make any money back on recorded music. You probably know this by now.
Sure.
In the streaming era, I need somebody to stream.
It's a hobby.
It's a hobby. It's an
expensive hobby. I got it.
So right now, like I have a high school senior and a high school sophomore. They go to City, and I can't just light thousands of dollars on fire to make a record.
Understood. So, as a journalist who writes and is creative, and I have felt this, and I wrote a letter to Eric DaCosta in Pearl Jam verse that you can go check out. I've written my own Declaration of Independence being thrown at. I should be at Ravens practice today, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what I did for all of that point in my life. I'm blessed to be here with you eating oysters and having sponsors and having fun and hoping that Nils Lofgren walks by and like all that. But there's a point where the creative part, and I talked to Michael Gelkin about this as a journalist, saying like when you write, it's what you do. I write whether anybody reads it or not. My wife always says, "You're writing for whom?" I'm like, I'm writing for myself. I'm writing to clear my head. I'm writing to get my thoughts together, and maybe one day I'll use this part of the song. And I think that must be what it's like to be Bruce Springsteen, to just sit around and write stuff. He's got so many songs nobody's ever heard because he's never wanted to be, and verses and lines and whatever, that are just forever in a trove that go nowhere. And I would think to be the kind of musician you are, I would love to have given enough time and been talented enough to have that skill set to just sing to my wife at night or sing to myself or just strum or play or learn something new that I want to do or perform. But it feels to me like to be an Eddie Lauer or to be somebody that comes – and Eddie's here tonight, by the way, Kooper's. Literally, I saw him last night. To come out and perform, and Lawrence Gowan from Styx was on this week, and he talked about, like, we have to get out and be in front of people. Even if we have new music and they don't want to hear it, we need to make it and we need to play it. And if they don't want it, that's fine. But at 70 years old, this is what a 70-year-old musician, you're a 40-something-year-old musician, right? Like, you have a skill set to do this, and if you put it down, you don't use it, but it's not about making money. What does it do for your soul to just grab a guitar and play it?
That's a great question, and you're absolutely right. Like, I still write, I still play. If we're gathered out on the stoop one evening in Butcher's Hill where I live, the guitar's likely to come out. I still have the 6-foot grand piano in my front room there where we could gather around, and I'll beat the hell out of that.
Oh, I didn't know you
night.
played piano too.
Yeah. I'm more of a piano player.
Really? That was your first skill?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm more
Did
piano
your mother
than
or
guitar.
father do that? No. This is your thing?
Yeah, nobody in my family.
Elton John? Billy Joel? What
all that stuff. Yeah, I would say those two were massive for me as a kid. And Springsteen, the Roy Bittan parts.
Sure.
Yeah. All that stuff, man. I just.
So you could go over me to Pendra right now, and me and Roy Bittan could play the beginning of Jungle.
Oh, I would not dare sit in there with Roy Bittan watching me. No. No way.
You're too
in
shy?
Hell.
Yeah. All right.
Not shy, just pale in comparison. No way am I going to play in front of him.
What is the greatest musical performance you've ever seen? If you and I are having a bottle of wine, Dave Sheinin, and you say, all right, like, I saw this thing once that was the greatest thing I'd ever seen.
Off the top of my head, and I could outthink myself and go with any number of different things, but I would say it would have to be Springsteen because Springsteen's the best live performer I've ever seen, and it would have to be Springsteen at the first Jazz Fest in New Orleans after Katrina, where it was 2006. Katrina had happened in the August before. They were on the fence about whether we're going to do this Jazz Fest because the city's been wrecked. The people were, scattered all over creation. Finally, they decided we're going to go through with this thing. Bruce Springsteen was on the lineup, and he showed with his big band.
I remember that. That was the Jug Band, right?
The Seeger Sessions.
Seeger Sessions, sure.
19, 20 people on stage.
Oh, man,
multiple fiddles.
No more. Yeah,
multiple fiddles, accordions,
Erie Canal.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So he comes out, and he played most of that record. And he also
it's got a New Orleans sound.
Yeah,
the whole thing, right?
It's like a little Dixieland type of thing,
sure.
Banjos and stuff. And then he played, a song. God, I can't even remember the name of it. That was a cover, but it was so spot on for that crowd on that day.
Maybe My City of Ruins, probably.
Well, it could have been. It was. He did play that, and it was amazing. How can a poor man something or other?
Yeah. How can a poor man survive? Yeah,
Something like that. It was just incredible. And it was a smallish crowd for Jazz Fest. The numbers were way down, which only meant that we got closer to the stage than
Sure.
any other Jazz Fest. And it was just I'll never forget it. It was joyous and mournful at the same time.
If you ask me that question, I'd really struggle with it. Like of all the concerts I've seen and stuff like that, I feel like I saw the Alarm at Hammerjacks one night where I feel like I saw rock and roll. It's like one of those moments where it was
those moments are different.
In a bar with 1,000 people where
Yeah.
everybody's on the edge of it and it's the end of the night in a pool of sweat.
Yeah.
That's effing rock and roll, right?
Yeah.
Like literally.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to talk some sports. Dave Shein's here from the Washington Post. It's all brought to you by the Maryland Lottery. We are the Maryland Crab Cake Tour. Oyster Fest is going on here in Fells Point, but Oyster Fest going on all month. I'm doing the Maryland Oyster Tour. On the 26th, we're going to be at the B&O Railroad Museum with all of the oyster farmers talking about oysters. And Sheinin already said, I didn't know there were 26 ways to eat them. I'm on day 9 or 10, and I'm finding I turned down an oyster sandwich yesterday for the roasted oysters. I have not had a Rockefeller yet. I have not had an oyster with a piece of bacon on it yet.
Yeah.
I have only had one bowl of oyster stew.
Oh, yes.
I went to Riley's. It was phenomenal.
Yeah.
A cream of thingy. I had go to the Federal House in Annapolis. I had a crab ceviche oyster. So raw oyster, ceviche, crab claw, Maryland crab claw in it. And it was just this complex thing that was just, I'm thinking about going back there right now. I went to the Urban Oyster in Hamden for brunch. My wife got dressed up. She looked as beautiful as she is. And I ordered, against my own, like I didn't know I was going to order this. I ordered an Oyster Benedict. So it's an oyster fritter, which is a little different than a fried oyster, on top of French toast with a poached egg on top. And it was... I mean, I didn't know I liked oysters this much. I mean, people are like, "Do you get sick of oysters?" No, I'm gonna eat them all day today. I'm gonna eat them tomorrow. I'm gonna eat them to the end of the month. We're gonna be at Fadley's on the 20th, State Fair on the 24th with Angela Alser-Brooks. 27th, we're gonna be at Costas down in Dundalk on the 20th. At Fadley's, I have John Sarbanes coming by for some oysters.
Nice.
And my goodness, we're going to be doing it every day. Dave Sheinin is my friend, first and foremost, musician, a sports writer, father, buddy, resident, Butcher's Hill dude, musician, and provides the music here for WNST. And he is just freshly back from Paris and Stade Olympique and the Olympics of the summer. We're going to talk some baseball, some football, some more rock and roll, and I'm still looking out the window for Gary W. talent. We're at Fells Point. We're at Kooper's. Come give us some love down here in Fells Point, and come down to the festival this weekend.